What if Luke Skywalker time-traveled to stop the creation of the Empire? What would have happened then? We pick up with Anakin and Padme in her apartment on the night Anakin received the vision of what he believed would be Padme's death. Let's begin. The Coruscant night spread across the balcony where Padme stood, running a brush through her dark curls as city lights sparkled behind her. Anakin watched her from inside, his face softening. "You're so beautiful," he murmured. She turned, a gentle smile playing across her features. "Only because I'm so in love." Before Anakin could respond, a sharp chirp cut through the moment. Her private comlink sounded on a nearby couch. With a flick of his fingers, Anakin floated it toward Padme, his expression tightening with annoyance. "It might be important," Padme said, catching the device. "If you say so," Anakin muttered. The voice that emerged spoke first, crisp and urgent. "Is this Senator Padme Naberi Amidala, former Queen of Naboo?" Padme's eyes met Anakin's. "Yes, who is—" "Just listen," the voice cut in. "What I'm about to say is important. Do you know who Darth Sidious is?" Anakin's posture shifted instantly. Few knew that name. Padme glanced at her husband before answering. "No." "Well, I do," the voice continued. "And I know much more that you both need to hear." "Who are you?" Padme pressed. "Is Anakin Skywalker, your husband, there with you?" The statement froze them both. Anakin tensed, fingers of his mechanical hand flexing. "Who is this?" he asked through the comm. "I'll tell you in person. I'm a Jedi, in a way. I'm near your apartment now and need access. I can't simply walk in." A pause. "If you try anything, I'll expose your secret marriage to anyone with holonet access. I mean you no harm, but I need assurance it will be just the three of us. I'm in no condition for complications." Anakin nodded to Padme, confident he could handle any threat. Events moved quickly after that. Captain Typho's man escorted their mysterious visitor up. When he entered, they saw a gaunt young man in civilian clothes, hooded sweatshirt, dark glasses despite the hour, carrying a bag. He moved with exhaustion etched in every step. "Your guard didn't believe I was a Jedi until I showed him this," he said, patting what must have been a lightsaber beneath his clothes. "Who are you?" Anakin began. "You have questions," the stranger interrupted, sinking into a chair. "I'll give you the answers you need to save yourselves and the Republic." He drew a breath. "Darth Sidious is Chancellor Palpatine. He's a Sith descendant of Darth Bane's rule of two. He plans to take over the galaxy using the clone army against the Jedi, who by the way have biological chips in their heads that will turn them against the Jedi when Contingency Order 66 is executed by Palpatine." The stranger slumped in his seat as if the weight of his words had physically drained him. "What?" Anakin demanded, while Padme remained silent, studying their visitor. The stranger continued, each word chosen with care despite his exhaustion. "Sheev Palpatine was apprenticed to Darth Plagueis, a Mune named Ego Damask, the Magister of Damask Holdings. He died the night before Palpatine became Chancellor." His voice carried a weary bitterness. "Palpatine killed him when he had no further use for him. They met on Naboo during Palpatine's teenage years. After his family's mysterious death, he became Plagueis' apprentice, became Darth Sidious. With Dooku's help, he engineered the clone army, the chips, the Clone Wars, all to destroy the Republic and the Jedi. Revenge for what happened on Ruusan a millennium ago." "I have proof," he added abruptly, producing a holoprojector. He activated it on the desk before slumping back in exhaustion. The Coruscant News Network logo flashed across the projection. Familiar broadcasts appeared. Palpatine accepting emergency powers, reporters covering the Chancellor's recent rescue by Kenobi and Skywalker. But then the timestamps began advancing into future dates. "What is this?" Padme asked. "Please, just watch," the stranger murmured, attempting to rise before giving up. The broadcast continued, breaking news of General Grievous's death. Then Palpatine, his face horrifically scarred, declaring a Jedi betrayal. Coverage of the Republic's transformation into an empire followed, with reporters documenting the systematic hunting down of Jedi by clone troopers. One segment zoomed in on concerned senators, including Padme herself, watching these proclamations. The footage began jumping further ahead. Death announcements of Senator Amidala and Anakin Skywalker came next. Reports about someone called Darth Vader. The holonet carried footage of the Senate's dissolution, rebellion outbreaks led by Mon Mothma, Alderaan's obliteration by a weapon called the Death Star, and its ultimate defeat. The names Luke Skywalker and Leia Organa kept appearing in the broadcasts. The stranger grew increasingly agitated at mentions of Luke, finally finding the strength to stumble away as the projection froze on a news report featuring Luke's image. Padme and Anakin turned to their visitor, noting his striking resemblance to the young man in the frozen broadcast. Padme felt a chill. Luke and Leia, the exact names she'd been considering for her child. Anakin's blue blade hummed to life, pointing at the stranger. "Who are you?" The stranger lifted his own lightsaber with the Force, floating it toward Anakin. "It was tough, recovering this. Take a look." Anakin studied the weapon, his expression shifting from suspicion to disbelief. It was his own saber. "Check the crystal," the stranger suggested quietly. Using the Force, Anakin disassembled the weapon. The kyber crystal inside was unmistakably his. While he processed this impossibility, the stranger floated something else toward Padme, a Japer snippet identical to the one she wore, though weathered by time. "This must be strange," he said, his dark glasses reflecting the blue hologram's light. The stranger pointed at Luke's image in the frozen news broadcast. "I'm him, and how I'm here now is complicated." He shifted uncomfortably. "My name is Luke." He hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the next part. "I'm your son, I suppose, from a certain point of view." He produced a medical scanner. "The bio readings will confirm what I'm saying if you need proof." "How is this possible?" Anakin asked, finally lowering his still ignited blade as he placed Luke's reassembled saber on the table. "This isn't time travel, if that's what you're thinking," Luke said. "It's not easy to explain." He looked at Anakin. "But I will try." Luke explained to his stunned audience how in his timeline, they had ultimately defeated the Empire and destroyed Palpatine's superweapon. When he mentioned that Palpatine's Sith apprentice had turned against him at the end, he notably looked away from Anakin. He spoke of his attempts to rebuild the Jedi Order, only to receive a vision of a future that would undo everything the rebellion had achieved. After exhausting every known method to prevent this dark future, Luke had fallen into hopelessness. The visions never ceased of the dark future. Desperate, he began investigating any unusual phenomena he encountered, hoping the Force might guide him to a solution. Through his contacts, he learned of an outer rim planet where monks had practiced meditation in ancient cave systems for generations. Occasionally, though rarely, monks would disappear during their meditations, never to be seen again. The ones that disappeared were believed to have gone to a higher dimension. Recently, something unprecedented had occurred. For the first time, one of these disappeared monks had returned, babbling about visiting different versions of his life, claiming he had walked through realities from his dreams. Most dismissed it as religious fervor or madness, but to Luke, desperately seeking any possibility, it warranted investigation. This led Luke to discover ancient chambers built within the cave system. These chambers were constructed from strange materials that completely isolated those inside from outside sensory input, creating perfect pockets of isolation. The original builders were long gone, but nearby monks still meditated in these chambers. Luke took residence nearby, determined to understand the phenomenon of the disappearances. During his research, he noticed a pattern. The vanishings occurred only during seasons when a particular plant flowered abundantly in the area. The plant, he discovered, wasn't native to the planet, suggesting it might have been brought there by whoever constructed the chambers. During these flowering periods, thick pollen covered everything, including the monks' food and water, and this was when they would sometimes vanish without explanation. His analysis of the plant revealed it produced a unique compound that affected consciousness. This, he theorized, might be connected to the disappearances. The monks who consumed food and water contaminated with the pollen during flowering seasons were unknowingly ingesting this consciousness-altering substance. Luke refined the compound into a concentrated form and first tested it outside the cave, documenting how it heightened his mental awareness and altered his perception of reality. Then he consumed the refined compound and entered one of the square chambers, each of which had a single door leading inside and outside. As he meditated inside, he felt a strange sensation wash over him. Opening his eyes, he discovered the small room had transformed. The walls to his left and right seemed to have vanished, revealing an endless corridor stretching infinitely in both directions. Each adjacent chamber was identical to his own, complete with the same door leading outside. When he first stepped through one of these doors, he emerged into what appeared to be the same cave system, but upon leaving the caves, he discovered a galaxy subtly different from his own. Returning to the corridor and trying another door, he found yet another altered reality. Luke realized then what had happened to the vanished monks. They hadn't disappeared, but had stumbled into different realities. Through experimentation, he discovered he could use his mental state and the Force to guide himself to specific timelines he wished to explore, and more importantly, how to return to his own reality. As he grew more proficient, Luke learned he could access points both forward and backward relative to his own timeline. He began exploring different realities systematically, searching for worlds where his dark vision never came to pass. He found realities where Palpatine had died early, some from natural causes, others where the Jedi had stopped him, and some where his health had simply failed before he could seize power. Luke discovered a pattern. In every reality where Palpatine succeeded in forming the Empire, darkness seemed to take root permanently. Though he believed there must be realities where Palpatine was somehow defeated after establishing his rule, he couldn't continue searching. The compound, which he needed to achieve the heightened meditative state that opened the infinite corridor, was taking a devastating toll on his body, deteriorating his health in ways that would soon prove fatal if he persisted. This led him to a different strategy. Instead of seeking a reality where darkness was overcome after the Empire's formation, he would find one where Palpatine could be stopped before seizing power. More importantly, in such a timeline, the Jedi Order would still exist with its vast archives of knowledge intact, not yet scattered and destroyed as in his own reality. If he helped prevent Palpatine's rise, the Jedi would owe him a debt, potentially granting him access to wisdom that might help prevent the dark future he'd foreseen in his own timeline. With this plan in mind, Luke gathered everything he would need to prove his identity and claims. Using the cave's chambers and the Force as his guide, he found a reality where Palpatine hadn't yet consolidated his power. He then made his way to this timeline's Coruscant, and after careful preparation, contacted them. Luke slumped back in his chair, drawing a ragged breath. I know it's overwhelming, but we have precious little time. Soon, Palpatine will orchestrate Grievous's destruction. That's when everything begins to unravel. Padme sank into the nearest seat, while Anakin rubbed his eyes, processing the impossible reality before them. You don't believe me? Luke asked softly. Padme looked at him, studying his features. You're really my son? A genetic copy, yes. Not your actual son, but what your son might become if we don't act quickly. Luke's hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his position. What happened to us? Anakin's voice was barely above a whisper. In your timeline? Luke exhaled heavily. I'd rather not dwell on it, but from what I understand, Anakin, you died on a planet called Mustafar. And Senator, he turned to her, you died in childbirth shortly after. To protect us from Palpatine, Leia and I were separated. I was sent to Tatooine, she to Alderaan. Tatooine? Anakin's eyes narrowed. With Owen and Beru? Yes. Eventually I joined the rebellion. Obi-Wan stayed nearby all those years, making sure the Empire didn't find me. And well, Luke gestured at the still glowing hologram. You saw what followed. And Leia? Padme leaned forward. She's happy, actually. Married to a brave man who fought alongside us in the rebellion. Luke's expression softened momentarily. I've kept all this, the visions, the cave, from her. She has her own battles to fight. I didn't want to burden her. Anakin and Padme exchanged looks, the staggering truth leaving them momentarily wordless. We don't have much time, Luke said, his voice rough. Neither do I. He reached up and removed his dark glasses, revealing why he'd worn them. Black veins spread like cracks through his skin, reaching into his eyes. I've lost vision in my left eye. Lost teeth, too. This compound, it's turning me into a corpse. He replaced the glasses with shaking hands. I need to find a solution here. Healing takes time, and I'm not sure how much can be reversed. If the Empire forms in this timeline, I'll have to keep using the chemical again. I don't know how long I have. The sight of his deteriorating condition shocked them into silence. Anakin, Luke said, his voice gaining urgency despite his evident exhaustion. You and I need to meet with the Council Masters immediately. We have to save the Order and the Republic. He leaned forward, his glasses reflecting the city lights. And I need their help understanding how to alter Force visions. The darkness I saw in my timeline, I can't let it come true. After discussing more details of the future, they agreed to proceed with the Council. But Anakin raised his hand. We should talk to Obi-Wan first. Yes, Luke nodded, a faint smile crossing his features. Seeing Obi-Wan again, that would be something. As Anakin moved to contact his former master, Padme kept studying Luke's face. About that earlier threat, Luke said, turning to her. I wouldn't have actually exposed your marriage. I just needed to ensure you'd listen. It's all right, Padme assured him. You did what you had to do. She paused, her expression growing thoughtful. Though I wonder how the Council will react once they learn about our marriage. We've kept it hidden for so long. We can try to keep my identity secret unless absolutely necessary, Luke offered, stone-faced. Though from what I've learned about your lives here, practically everyone already knew about you two. Padme laughed softly, and Luke started to join in, but doubled over, coughing blood into his sleeve. Anakin returned to them. Obi-Wan is on his way. It'll be good to see him as a Jedi again, Luke said quietly. Last time I saw him, he He trailed off, shaking his head. Pretty rough shape. So not much has changed then, Anakin said with a slight smirk. Minutes later, Obi-Wan arrived. They explained everything. The time shifts, Palpatine's true identity, the dark future. The Jedi Master listened with increasing astonishment, his eyes moving between the holoprojector's images and Luke's face, noting the unmistakable blend of Anakin and Padme's features. "I know it's difficult to believe," Luke said, his exhaustion more evident now, "but I need your help. Not just to save this timeline, but to find a way to prevent the darkness I saw in my own world." He suppressed another cough. The knowledge in the Jedi archives might be the key. Obi-Wan stroked his beard, processing everything he'd heard. "Given the magnitude of what you've revealed, the Council will help you. We owe you that much for this warning." He glanced at Anakin. "Though I suspect this conversation with the Council will be interesting." Soon Luke, Anakin, and Obi-Wan flew through Coruscant's upper levels in a temple speeder. As they approached, Luke leaned forward, his attention caught by the Jedi Temple rising against the city's skyline. "That temple sits on a Sith shrine. Did you know that?" Luke asked quietly. "What?" Anakin turned to him, brow furrowed. "No, we didn't know that." "We know very little, it seems," Obi-Wan mused. As Luke settled back in his seat, Anakin noticed the glint of mechanical components. The prosthetic looked more sophisticated than his own, sleeker, with more natural movement. "How did you lose it?" Anakin asked, nodding toward Luke's mechanical hand. Luke hesitated for just a second before responding. "Oh, a Sith Lord took it," he said simply, then immediately realized who he was talking to. Technically, the man asking had been the one who took it. "Same thing happened to me," Anakin said with a slight grin. "Must be a Skywalker tradition. More like a Skywalker tradition of running into Sith Lords, thinking you can take them down alone. Is that what happened to you as well, Luke?" Obi-Wan asked. Luke let out a dry laugh. "Something like that." They arrived at the temple under Coruscant's night sky, the massive structure rising before them as their speeder touched down on one of the landing platforms. Soon, Luke, Anakin, and Obi-Wan stood before the assembled council members in the circular chamber, high above Coruscant. As they explained everything, the time shifts, Palpatine's true identity, the dark future, Luke played the news recordings. They had tried to keep his actual identity secret, but between the evidence they presented and his striking resemblance to Anakin, it became impossible to maintain that discretion. The only detail Luke held back was the identity of Darth Vader, simply stating that the mysterious Sith Lord had died aboard the second Death Star. Over the next few hours, the council members questioned them extensively. Finally, to test Luke's claims before taking action, they dispatched secret reconnaissance to Utapau. When their agents confirmed Grievous's presence, exactly where Luke said he would be, the last doubts faded. As Luke waited in the council chambers, the Jedi enacted their plan. Rather than engaging Grievous on Utapau, which would have alerted Palpatine, they moved straight to the Security Council. Through Force suggestion, they convinced the council members that Palpatine was Sidious, leading them to activate Contingency Order 65 for his immediate removal from office. With the Security Council under Jedi control and Order 65 enacted, Palpatine found himself stripped of power, including his ability to execute Order 66. When the Jedi came to arrest him, he initially complied, recognizing that without his clone army, without his emergency powers, there was little chance of victory. But the Jedi, fully aware of who he was, probed his mind to confirm his Sith identity. Only then did they strike. The fight was fierce but brief, and in the end, as prophecy had foretold, Palpatine fell to Anakin's blade. Following Palpatine's death, the Jedi quickly assembled the evidence to reveal Sidious's true identity and manipulations. Luke had brought detailed information from his investigation before his dimension jump. Not future events, but historical records that had been buried. Financial trails, communication logs, records from Naboo that tied Palpatine to his early Sith training. The testimonies of the arrested Separatist leaders, including Grievous, proved crucial. They confirmed being manipulated by Sidious, their statements corroborating Luke's evidence. The truth of the Sith Lord's decades-long manipulation of both sides of the war became impossible to deny. The Republic moved swiftly to elect a new Chancellor, while the Jedi orchestrated a galaxy-wide operation to remove the inhibitor chips from the clone troops. Peace began to take hold. As for Anakin and Padme's marriage, the Council had seen how their union had, in a way, saved the galaxy. After all, without it, Luke would never have existed to warn them. They chose to simply look the other way. Luke met with the Council Masters to discuss his visions and their manipulation. Yoda assured him that future visions were not absolute, a teaching that brought a faint smile to Luke's face. "Access to the archives you shall have, and to your world, Jedi Masters can travel. to aid in your mission." Luke nodded, clearly pleased with this development. But before he could dive back into the caves and his research, Anakin intervened. "Not until you recover," Anakin insisted. "That compound has done enough damage." And so, for the time being, Luke remained on Coruscant, spending most of his time submerged in Bacta at the temple's healing chambers. Meanwhile, the present timeline adjusted to its new course. When Luke and Leia were born, Padme survived the delivery, Anakin never having received the vision that had set the original tragedy in motion. That future had been erased the moment Luke appeared in their universe. Jar Jar's Sith name is Darth Darthius.